Well, our top focus story continues to remain the stand that the central government has taken in Parliament over the oxygen shortage in the second wave of coronavirus. The Union Health Ministry has said that the states have not provided any information on the deaths of COVID patients in hospitals due to a lack of oxygen, with the number of deaths due to oxygen shortage making headlines during the second wave, especially in Delhi. The matter has drawn sharp criticism from the quarters of the opposition. The government has said that due to the unprecedented surge in demand for medical oxygen during the second wave, demand in the country peaked to around 9,000 metric tons of medical oxygen. The active caseload of states and union territories was the primary determinant of oxygen allocation. Factors such as case doubling rate, medical infrastructure, etc. were given due consideration. The allocation was kept dynamic as per the changing pandemic load. But the Health Minister, Mansukh Mandavia, on the floor of the Parliament has said that there were no deaths that were reported due to a lack of medical oxygen, and he says the reason the central government maintains no deaths were reported due to a lack of medical oxygen is because the states haven't provided any such data.
और प्रधानमंत्री जी ने बार-बार कहा मृत्यु रजिस्टर करिए, छुपाने का कोई कारण ही नहीं है। स्टेट करता है, उसको ही रजिस्ट्रेशन करना होता है, उसको डालना होता है। यहाँ तो किसी ने मना नहीं किया है। भारत सरकार आंकड़ा छुपा रही है। भारत सरकार जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट आंकड़ा भेजती है उसको कंपाइल करके पब्लिश करती है। भारत सरकार का काम होता है उसको पब्लिश करने का, उसके अलावा हमारा कोई काम नहीं होता है।
Now, the Uttar Pradesh government has acknowledged 2,000 plus COVID deaths of its employees, including teachers, during poll duty in the April Panchayat elections. The government has also ordered a compensation of 30 lakh rupees each for the families of those who died. This is in sharp contrast to the government's stand just 2 months ago when it claimed that less than 100 government employees had died during the rural polls in the state.
The Adityanath government admitted last week that a massive 2,000 plus UP government employees died of COVID after poll duty in the April Panchayat elections. Just days ago, the government had claimed this figure was less than 100 overall deaths. This UP government letter, sent to the State Election Commission last week, says compensation has been cleared for 2020 Panchayat poll-related deaths across government departments of the 3,000 plus applications received. Among those now eligible for a 30 lakh rupee government compensation, the family of Seema Kumar, a primary school teacher in Saharanpur, who died on the 26th of April, 11 days after poll duty.
हमारी बहू की जो डेथ है इलेक्शन की ड्यूटी की ही वजह से हुई है। जो ना गवर्नमेंट को सोचना चाहिए कि बच्चों का साया चला जाता है। गवर्नमेंट को करना चाहिए कि जो है ना इस कोरोना के टाइम में जो है ना कोई इलेक्शन ना कराए।
But what has caused this change of heart, given that till May end, the government was only willing to acknowledge 77 deaths and claimed that just 3 of them were teachers.
चुनाव चूंकि हैं जल्दी, अभी होने वाले हैं 6 महीने 8 महीने बाद, इसलिए दे रहे हैं। लेकिन हमारा मानना है कि अगर सबको लाभ नहीं दिया गया, इसमें वंचित रह गए, तो निश्चित रूप से गलत होगा।
The total compensation will cost the government approximately 600 crore rupees. Half of that money has already been released, the government says. But among those caught up in red tape, Rita Yadav, the wife of primary teacher Santosh Yadav, one of those who died in eastern UP's Ghazipur.
मैं क्या अब विभाग के हिसाब से तो मैं उस दायरे में नहीं आई, लेकिन क्या उस निर्वाचन ड्यूटी लगाने वाले की कोई जिंदगी नहीं थी क्या उसकी?
The UP government says it is willing to consider more compensation applications. With Sunil Singh, Ashok Kashyap and camera person Vineet Verma, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
The Center for Global Development, a Washington-based think tank, has come up with a study which claims that India's excess deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic could be as high as 4.9 million. Excess deaths are estimated to be in the range of 3.4 to 4.7 million is what the study says, which is 10 times higher than what India's official COVID death toll currently is, which is just over 4 lakhs. Arguably India's worst human tragedy since partition and independence. The report is co-authored by the former Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian. The data imply that 4 million people died in the pandemic in India. Now, Maharashtra has added a backlog of 3,500 deaths and 2,479 past cases. The cases and deaths in the last 24 hours have also been higher than the previous day. Well, on to the other interesting development that we're tracking. Roughly 2/3 of all Indians over the age of 6, or approximately 67.6% of our population, has developed antibodies against the coronavirus. This, according to a latest survey by the ICMR. The government announced this result of the 4th Sero survey yesterday. Now, the survey, the government says, was conducted across 70 districts in 21 states in the end of June, beginning of July. And here are what the findings were.
Two out of 3 people in the country have COVID antibodies. A new survey done by the government has shown. The Sero survey was done end June, early July, and shows a massive jump, almost 68% from January's 24%. However, officials warned that this big jump is partly explained by vaccinations. Almost 90% of those fully vaccinated had antibodies. Also, this means about 40 crore are still vulnerable.
इस सीरो पॉजिटिविटी में वैक्सीन लगने से भी जो सीरो पॉजिटिविटी आई है वो भी दिखाई देती है, क्योंकि अनवैक्सीनेटेड में जिनको नहीं मिला उनमें सीरो पॉजिटिविटी कम है, जिसको मिला तो फिर वो ऐड होके वो भी दिखाई दे रही है.
The survey also covered almost 3,000 children and reported that 57% of them had antibodies. The ICMR chief, Dr. Bhargav, said that if schools have to open, then primary schools should open first, but that this was up to each district.
बच्चों में एस रिसेप्टर भी उनके लंग्स में बहुत कम होते हैं, तो वायरस जहाँ जाके चिपकना होता है, जहाँ अटैच होना होता है, वो नहीं कर पाता. अगर स्कूल खोलने हैं तो पहले प्राइमरी स्कूल खोलने चाहिए.
However, experts maintain that people must continue to wear masks, avoid crowds and get vaccinated. COVID's threat is far from over. The virus can still mutate, and even those who have been vaccinated can still carry and spread the virus, even if they don't get infected. NDTV Bureau Report.
Well, on to the big story. We're tracking from the northeast, where most of the states are witnessing a prolonged second wave of the pandemic, with more cases of the Delta variant emerging in the region and a slow decline in the number of fresh cases. Several states in the northeast have been forced to either announce fresh lockdowns or stricter measures to control the situation. Ratnadeep with the full story.
The COVID crisis here in the northeast is alarmingly high. For instance, while the all India cases have fallen to a 4-month low, Mizoram has reported a new all-time high of 807 fresh cases, of which significantly 233 cases are that of minors. Tiny and remote, Sikkim's officials are concerned at its prolonged second wave. 99% of the samples sent for genome sequencing recently were the Delta virus strains, while only 20% of the population is fully vaccinated.
अहिलेको जुन 23 जुनमा पठाएको जेनोम सिक्वेन्सिङको अब आज मात्रै इमेलद्वारा यो कन्फर्म गरिएको छ. यसको विधिवत रिपोर्ट डेल्टा भेरिएन्ट हाम्रो यो जुन पुल गरिएको स्याम्पल थियो 98 वटा स्याम्पललाई हामीले पुल गरेर र्यान्डमली पठाएको थियो. त जेनोम सिक्वेन्सिङमा फेरि उहाँहरूले 97 वटा स्याम्पलमा डेल्टा भेरिएन्ट भनेपछि कन्फर्म भयो. ती प्रिभलेन्ट हाम्रो यसमा रहेछ कम्युनिटीमा भन्ने कुरा बुझ्यौं.
It's not only Sikkim, but across northeast there is a high prevalence of the Delta variant. And positivity rate is also high in states like Meghalaya, Manipur and Mizoram. And the R factor that determines the speed at which the infection is spreading is also high in this region. On 19th July, the national reproduction number was 0.97. But except for Assam, the other 7 northeastern states were more than 1. That is, indicating that infections are spreading and not contracting. For Mizoram, R value has increased to 1.27 from 0.86 this week. Manipur, where R was slightly over 1 last week, but has now increased to 1.24. Tripura also saw an increase of R to 1.17 from nearly 1 last week. In Arunachal Pradesh, the value was 1.14 last week, but has increased to 1.15. For Sikkim, R increased to 1.20 this week from 0.88. Similarly, the R in Nagaland increased to 1.1 from 0.87 last week. Meghalaya also saw a rise in its R value from 0.92 to 1.08. Assam has an R value of 0.86, the only state in northeast below national average. On top of it, a recent ICMR study shows the northeast is reporting breakthrough infections.
In a recent survey of 6,000 SARS-CoV-2 positive, we found 18% were of vaccinated category, 12% after first dose and 6% after second dose. And this Delta is prevalent in Northeast at the moment. And we also do have an instance of mixed infection, that is by both Alpha and Delta variant.
Manipur is on a 10-day lockdown since last Sunday. Tripura has already imposed a weekend curfew and a day curfew in Agartala and 11 other urban local body areas till July 23rd. Assam has total containment zone and curfew in 5 districts. The fear of an extended second wave merging into a possible third wave looms large.
Because of the various interventions which were carried out in the northeastern states, the plateau is not very high. The end of the second wave may merge with the third wave. There was not a high peak unlike the other states of mainland India.
The second wave has hit northeast with a lag, but had remained prolonged as compared to the other parts of the country. It has been a test for the limited health infrastructure of the region to put up with this long haul. With inputs from Dali Fanai and Aizol, in Guwahati, Ratndeep Chaudhary for NDTV.
Welcome back. On to the other big political story we're tracking today. The Punjab Chief Minister Captain Amrinder Singh will not meet Navjot Singh Sidhu until he apologizes for his social media attacks. That's what a member of Amrinder Singh's team tweeted out to say. A tweet from Mr. Singh's media strategist Raveen Thukral says reports of Navjot Singh Sidhu seeking time to meet Captain Amrinder Singh are totally false. No time has been sought whatsoever. No change in stance. The Chief Minister won't meet Navjot Singh Sidhu until he publicly apologizes for his personally derogatory social media remarks against him. This coming at a time when Sidhu has, remember, gotten a huge welcome from his supporters in Amritsar. All right, from Punjab, let's now shift our focus to Madhya Pradesh. A draft population control bill prepared by the Uttar Pradesh State Law Commission that proposes to debar people with more than 2 children from contesting local body polls or applying for government jobs or even receiving any kind of subsidy, among other things, has generated a lot of attention in Madhya Pradesh as well. Many sitting ministers and BJP politicians are now asking for a similar law in Madhya Pradesh.
आप हिंदुओं को तो कह देंगे नसबंदी करा लो और दूसरे भाइयों को कहेंगे फ्री हो जाओ.
A shocker from Madhya Pradesh BJP MLA Ram Lallu Vaishya, who wants a UP-like 2-child norm proposal for his state. Except Mr. Vaishya has 9 children himself.
हमारा नारा था हम दो हमारे दो. क्या ये संभव हो सका? पर नहीं, मैं ये कहता हूँ कि समय के हिसाब से आप हिंदुओं को तो कह देंगे नसबंदी करा लो और दूसरे भाइयों को कहेंगे फ्री हो जाओ.
Earlier this month, a draft bill in Uttar Pradesh, prepared by the state's law commission, proposed multiple curbs on people with more than 2 children, including on the right to contest local polls. In neighbouring MP, it's not just BJP MLAs, but even this top minister who wants something similar.
इस देश की बहुत बड़ी समस्या जनसंख्या है. इस देश की बहुत बड़ी समस्या आबादी है और निश्चित रूप से यदि आबादी को इस जनसंख्या पर हम नियंत्रण करेंगे तो हमारी बहुत सारी समस्याएं समाप्त होंगी. इसलिए मेरा स्पष्ट मानना है कि निश्चित रूप से जनसंख्या नियंत्रण कानून की परिधि में आना चाहिए.
Another top MP politician, BJP MLA and former pro-term speaker Rameshwar Sharma has written to CM Shivraj Singh Chauhan on the issue. Another state minister has shockingly given the issue a communal color.
मुस्लिम्स में ये समस्या नहीं है. वो चाहते हैं 2-3 शादियां करते हैं और 10 बच्चे कर लेते हैं. इस पर कुछ करना चाहिए.
जो लोग समझ रहे हैं वो अपने आप कंट्रोल करते हैं. इस पे कोई पाबंदी किसी के लिए नहीं है और लोग मान रहे हैं. बात यह है कि जिस नियत से ये इस कानून की बात कर रहे हैं, इस नियत से हमारा इख्तिलाफ है, हमारा विरोध है, क्योंकि इनकी नियत केवल उत्तर प्रदेश के चुनाव को टारगेट करना है.
But do MPs, BJP politicians really walk the talk on population control? The state has 227 sitting MLAs. Over 39% or 49 out of 125 BJP MLAs have more than 3 children. 14 MLAs have more than 4 children, while 3 BJP MLAs have more than 5 children. In 2000, the Congress government in the state, led by Digvijay Singh, introduced a 2-child norm for government services and panchayat level polls. But this was challenged in court and withdrawn by the BJP government in 2005.
While replying to a public interest litigation in Supreme Court last year, the central government has said that India was on the verge of achieving a replacement level of fertility rate of 2.1% through various voluntary birth control measures, and any coercion to have a certain number of children was counterproductive and will lead to demographic distortion. Still, statements made by the political dispensation in Madhya Pradesh shows that their concern was more of a political and less social. In Bhopal with camera person Rizwan Khan, Anurag Dwari for NDTV.
Welcome back. Phone numbers linked to the JDS Congress government in Karnataka were possible targets for surveillance back in 2019 at a time when the ruling coalition collapsed and the B.S. Yediyurappa-led BJP took power. The Wire has said this in its latest set of revelations connected to the Israeli spyware Pegasus. Phone numbers of the then Deputy Chief Minister Parameshwar Rao, also aides of the Chief Minister Kumaraswamy, the ex-Chief Minister Siddaramaiah are on the leaked list. The Wire report links the fall of the JDS Congress government in July 2019 and the BJP's takeover to alleged snooping, an allegation that's been echoed by the Congress, even though there is no evidence just yet to establish whether phones were indeed hacked. Here are the political reactions.
Opposition leaders from Karnataka, that is Siddaramaiah or Parameshwar or myself, when we running the coalition government, at that time BJP friends, they are misusing their office, good office, to get information by tapping our phones.
Snooping activity done by Pegasus is highly condemnable, and more particularly we are concerned about India, and without the permission of the government of India, either Ministry of Home or from the Prime Minister's office, they cannot do it. I am sure the government is involved in this. They have now used their power, misused their power to topple the governments in the country. They have done it in the case of Madhya Pradesh. They have done it in the case of Karnataka, and they have also tried elsewhere, even West Bengal. I asked for an inquiry, none other than the Supreme Court judges, because even the judges' telephones have been compromised. People of India need to know why they do it and who is answerable to all this. I was surprised to know that Pegasus has compromised my phone.
All right, now reacting to this entire snooping row, NSO has told NDTV that the list of leaked phone numbers by Forbidden Stories is not in fact an NSO list. It is fabricated information. It's not a list of targets or potential targets of NSO customers. NSO doesn't have access to the data of its customers. And what the NSO essentially says is, from a sensational headline screaming 50,000 phone numbers, we're left with just 35. We will investigate if there's proof of misuse. Now, while the NSO group claims the list of numbers that was accessed by the French non-profit organization Forbidden Stories is not an NSO list, NDTV has spoken with a Forbidden Stories journalist who stands by the story.
Once again, when we reached out to NSO group, they put out a statement which we'll put on screen, where they say that, look, this list has nothing to do with NSO, we don't know where it's come from, and in a sense this is a defense that's also being recycled by governments like ours. What would you say to that?
With Amnesty International, we had access to a large list of 50,000 phone numbers that were selected as potential targets of surveillance in at least 10 countries around the world. We, through an analysis of that list and through a number of forensics analyses of phones that had been infected, we were able to show in a large way how extensive this spyware seems to be used in a number of countries around the world. Okay. So in India alone, we were able to verify the numbers of more than 40 journalists, everyone from journalists like Swati Chaturvedi and Rohini Singh, who are contributors for The Wire, to local journalists, Jaspal Haran Singh in Punjab. So we also performed, like I said, 67 in analysis, forensic analyses of phones that appeared in this list, and 37 of those revealed at least traces of spyware infection.
Sure. But Phineas, to my question though, as to where you managed to get this list from, and is it in fact a list of potential NSO Pegasus targets? Because as you just probably heard as well, NSO is claiming that it's not.
We believe that our reporting and our analysis of this data seems to indicate that these numbers were at least potential targets of this spyware. And it's very important to note that this is not necessarily, appearance on this list does not necessarily imply that the phone was compromised or was even targeted.
Okay. But at this stage, I assume that you're not keen to disclose how you access this list.
I'm afraid not.
Okay, but you stand by the fact that it is an NSO Pegasus list. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we'll continue to keep a close watch on that story and get you all the reactions. But moving on, Oxfam India's 2021 report highlights that India's health inequality was made worse by a reduced health budget. The report says that the absence of universal health coverage has starkly and disproportionately affected marginalized groups at a time when socio-economic inequalities in India are growing because of the COVID-19 pandemic. NDTV's Parmeshwar Bawa breaks down the details.
Sharp inequalities exist across different caste, religious, class and gender categories on various health indicators, according to the latest report by Oxfam India. A report titled India Inequality Report 2021, India's Unequal Healthcare Story by Oxfam India shows that 65.7% of the households belonging to the general category have access to improved non-shared sanitation facilities, while only 25.9% scheduled tribe households have improved non-shared sanitation facilities. Now, 12.6% more children are stunted in scheduled caste households than those in households belonging to the general category. And the chances of a child dying before his 5th birthday is 3 times higher for the bottom 20% of the population as compared to the top 20%. Now, the report had some shocking claims based on a primary survey. Now, 1 of every 6 rupees spent on hospitalization came through borrowing. Currently, there are 5 beds per 10,000 people, which is down from the 9 beds per 10,000 people as per the 2012 Human Development Report. And much to our dismay, the report states that there is 1 state-run hospital for every 90,343 people. Now, the number of hospital beds per 1,000 population in India is lower than some of the lesser developed countries such as Bangladesh, Kenya and Chile. The Oxfam India report shows that constant underfunding of public healthcare system in the last decade has also worsened health infrastructure. So while the report claims that the general category is better off than the SCs and STs, it also highlights that Hindus are better off than Muslims, men are better off than women, and the urban population is better off than the rural population on most health determinants, interventions, as well as health indicators. Now, there are 2 facets to what the Oxfam report has found. The first is states that have for the past few years been reducing inequalities, such as inequalities to access to health between the general category and the SC and ST populations, have less confirmed cases of COVID, such as Telangana, Himachal Pradesh and Rajasthan. Now, on the other hand, states that have had higher GDP expenditure on health, such as Assam, Bihar and Goa, have higher recovery rates of COVID cases. The report points out that the vaccination drive against COVID-19 ignores the country's digital divide. Entering the pandemic, only 15% rural households had an internet connection, and more than 60% of women across 12 states had never used the internet, the report highlighted. Another stark observation in the report outlines the out-of-pocket health expenditure of 64.2% in India is higher than the world average of 18.2%. Now, some of the Oxfam report recommendations include increasing health spending to 2.5% of the GDP to ensure a more equitable health system in the country. It also asserts that the right to health should be enacted as a fundamental right that makes it obligatory for the government to ensure equal access to timely and affordable health care, as well as widening the ambit of insurance schemes to include outpatient care.
Well, on to the other big story that we're tracking. Vaccinations have dropped in Prime Minister's constituency of Varanasi. 5% of Varanasi's population is fully vaccinated, and there has been a 50% drop in vaccinations in the last 10 days.
Stalled COVID vaccinations at multiple locations in Prime Minister Modi's Lok Sabha seat, Varanasi. With most private hospitals out of vaccines and big crowds with no social distancing at the government centres where vaccines are in stock. Administrators at the privately run Birla Charitable Hospital, a major vaccination centre, say things are stuck for 10 days.
सर अभी वैक्सीनेशन की सप्लाई नहीं आ रही है फिलहाल अभी बंद है क्या तारीख से बंद हुआ वैक्सीनेशन 9 जुलाई से
Just 5% of Varanasi's 42 lakh population is fully vaccinated, while 10.6 lakh people, or 25% of the district's population, have got at least one dose of the COVID vaccine. Of the 150 COVID vaccination booths across the eastern UP district, just 40 are functional right now.
टीके हमको देखिए एक बार स्टॉक में नहीं रखे रहते हैं, ये टीके हमको लगातार मिलते रहते हैं, लेकिन ज़रूरत पड़ने पर, आवश्यकता पड़ने पर हम लोग सेंटर्स को प्लान कर लेते हैं, कुछ बढ़ा भी लेते हैं, कभी कभी कुछ कम भी कर लेते हैं, जैसी उपलब्धता रहती है वैक्सीन की.
Just 4 days ago, Prime Minister Modi was in Varanasi, hailing UP for the maximum number of vaccinations in the country.
देश का सबसे बड़ा प्रदेश कोरोना की दूसरी वेव को जिस तरह यूपी ने संभाला वो अभूतपूर्व है.
But in the last 10 days, vaccinations in Varanasi have fallen 50% according to government data, from a high of 23,941 doses on July 8 to just 10,424 doses on Saturday. With Ajay Singh in Varanasi, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
All right, well, Mumbai once again witnessed massive waterlogging in several low-lying areas after a bout of extremely heavy rainfall. The question citizens have is whether all the money that is spent on flood mitigation measures are going down the drain. Well, this particular question was asked to the Municipal Commissioner of Mumbai, I.S. Chahal, who explains just what happened in Mumbai.
So I'll ask Mr. Chahal first, sir. Every year, the first question that citizens ask the BMC is that what happened to stormwater drains budget? And legitimate question, but could you explain how this works?
This month in July, in 4 days, we had 70% of the July's total rainfall which fell in 4 days, more than 300 millimeters. So either now we have long gaps or suddenly we have flood situations. Now our stormwater drains, they have been, their diameters, their carrying capacity is such that if it rains about 25 to 30 millimeter per hour, then there is no flooding, everything is fine, and all the rain which falls, all the water gets cleared automatically, and there is no waterlogging anywhere. And as per our state government norms also, the traditional norms are if there is a 65 millimeter plus rainfall in 24 hours, then we call it, it's like a ativrishti, or it's like a flooding. But now we are seeing that in 1 hour you are getting 65 millimeter rainfall. Unlike
3 hours, 200.
Unlike 65 millimeter in 24 hours, we get 65 millimeter in 1 hour. We had 80 millimeter in 1 hour also. And in 3 hours, 3 days back, we had 25 millimeter rainfall in 3 hours. Now in such scenario, when the carrying capacity of our stormwater drains is not more than 30 millimeter per hour, naturally the remaining water starts gathering. It starts, waterlogging starts happening. Now this phenomenon has got nothing to do with Nala Safai. It has got nothing to do with the choked drains. So it is basically a fundamental issue of rainfall pattern and our carrying capacity of drains, assuming they're 100% clean, still they can't carry. In how much time the water gets drained out, that is directly proportional to the level of Nala Safais.
Welcome back. You're tuned in to Good Morning India. I'm Rishika Barwa. Top focus. Well, The Wire has said in the latest set of revelations connected to the Israeli spyware Pegasus that phone numbers linked to the JDS Congress government in Karnataka were possible targets for surveillance back in 2019. At the time, remember, when the ruling coalition collapsed and the B.S. Yediyurappa-led BJP took power. The Wire has said that phone numbers of the then Deputy Chief Minister Parameshwara, aides of the Chief Minister Kumaraswamy, ex-Chief Minister Siddaramaiah are all on the leaked list. Now, Maya Sharma joins us with the very latest. Maya, The Wire report has linked essentially the fall of the JDS Congress government in July 2019 and the BJP's takeover to alleged snooping. Now, this is an allegation that's been echoed by the opposition, the Congress as well. However, there is still no evidence to establish this link directly.
That is correct. Yes, the names on the list of potential phones being tapped included phones connected to former Chief Minister H.D. Kumaraswamy, former Congress Chief Minister Siddaramaiah and Deputy Chief Minister Dr. G. Parameshwara. Still no evidence, of course, that their phones were actually tapped, but they were on a list of people. That list meant that they were potentially being tapped, and they certainly believe that they were. In the statements that they have made, they do believe that their phones were being tapped, and the implications of this are really tremendous. July 2019, the whole of 2019, which saw the collapse of the JDS Congress coalition government in Karnataka, it was a time of wheeling and dealing, backroom chats, negotiations, MLAs in resorts. It was full on political drama, and any side that perhaps had an insight as to what the other side was planning would have had a tremendous edge in this political negotiation. The implications are really tremendous. There was a time, of course, when the leaders of each party were desperately trying to hold on to those MLAs. Congress and JDS leaders met the MLAs who eventually defected. They spoke to them, bargained with them, maybe offered them incentives. We don't know exactly what the behind-the-scenes dealings were, but if somebody was listening on the phones, they would have known what was going on. So the Congress certainly up in arms, saying that this is atrocious, that there should be an inquiry, with former Deputy Chief Minister G. Parameshwara even calling for an inquiry involving Supreme Court judges. Former Chief Minister H.D. Kumaraswamy is taking a little bit more of a relaxed approach. He was in fact accused of phone tapping himself when he was Chief Minister in 2019, and he said that the country should just move on and focus on other things, that leaders should focus on other things. But seriously, a huge embarrassment that these lists should come out. If indeed the phones of Congress and JDS leaders were tapped, it would have great implications on the fall of the coalition government between the JDS and the Congress. Let's listen to what former Chief Minister H.D. Kumaraswamy and former Deputy Chief Minister Dr. G. Parameshwara had to say on the issue.
Opposition leaders from Karnataka, that is Siddaramaiah or Parameshwara or myself, when we were running the coalition government, at that time, BJP friends, they are misusing their office, good office, to get information by tapping our phones.
Snooping activity done by Pegasus is highly condemnable, and more particularly we are concerned about India. And without the permission of the Government of India, either Ministry of Home or from the Prime Minister's office, they cannot do it. I am sure the government is involved in this. They have now used their power, misused their power to topple the governments in the country. They have done it in the case of Madhya Pradesh. They have done it in the case of Karnataka, and they also tried elsewhere, even West Bengal. I asked for an inquiry, none other than the Supreme Court judges, because even the judges' telephones have been compromised. People of India need to know why they do it and who is answerable to all this. I was surprised to know that Pegasus has compromised my phone.
Well, joining us on the broadcast, Smita Gupta, senior journalist. We have Aishwarya Mahadev, spokesperson of the Congress party, and Mahesh Verma, leader of the BJP. Smita Gupta, to you first, your first reaction to the latest revelations in the Wire report, something obviously, that the Congress has now taken up.
Well, it's appalling if it is true. The fact is that at the moment people are saying they don't have hard evidence. But the fact is that these names of Congress and JDS leaders was on a list which was of people whose phones were to be tapped. And this occurred at a time when the Congress JDS government was toppled by the BJP. And at such a time, for telephonic conversations between between those who were in government would have been of great use to anybody who wanted to topple that government. And the point is that this Pegasus spyware that is available for purchase only by governments, it means that nobody else could have used it. It was bought under the pretext that the telephone calls of terrorists and such people would be tapped. But to use it against your political opponents or against your critics, such as journalists or other politicians or businessmen or anybody who is critical of you, is absolutely appalling in a democracy. And it goes against the very spirit of democracy.
Well, Aishwarya Mahadev, your reaction, the Congress has of course taken this up. But at the same time, there is no evidence so far to say that, these phone numbers that are featured on the list were indeed spied upon. There are questions still, several questions in terms of evidence that still need to be answered. But your first reaction to this?
Rishika, this just gets murkier by the day, and the silence of the government is beyond sickening. When you see there's no evidence or not, the fact that all these political opponents were on a list, people during the toppling of the government, whether they were surveilled or not, the fact that they were even put on a list to be monitored is something that obviously has to be answered. And the fact that the government of the day hasn't given us a yes or no answer. And if you look at the entire, the sequence of events, it is an implied admission as to who exactly has done it. And the Karnataka Congress, not only the Congress leadership, not only the opposition, but also the national leadership of the Congress has obviously highlighted how great an offense this is. And the silence of the government is not an answer anymore. This is not only about politics, this is also a grave security breach and also an invasion of privacy. And let me just say, Rishika, when the coalition government was accused of tapping phones itself, Mr. Yediyurappa, when he toppled our government and became chief minister, started an active investigation and handed it to the CBI for a probe, and it's also ongoing. When they were so willing to do that then, why is it now that the government is completely silent? And Rishika, just the lack of answers will not allow this government to hide, because who made the list, who ordered the probes, and obviously anybody getting NSO software or Pegasus has to have a clearance from the Israeli defense minister and has to be a sovereign entity. And the other grave fact is, you have to tell us, where is this data gone? If it has gone outside, it's obviously a data breach and a security breach, because national sovereignty. If ministers are being probed, it's a violation of the Official Secrets Act, and the government just cannot hide. This gets worse by the day, and the silence is deafening, to be honest, Rishika.
Right. Mahesh Verma, do you think, this timing is extremely crucial, and like, while we've put out that it hasn't been established whether these phones were infected or hacked, the fact that you have, Operation Kamal now, as it was called at the time, being linked to Pegasus, is indeed damning.
बहुत ही दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण स्थिति है इस देश में कि कांग्रेस जैसी पार्टी जो है अपनी हार की ठीकरा या अपने हार का को कहीं कनेक्ट कर रही है इस तरह की चीजों से, जब आज देश की जरूरत क्या है उसको समझे बगैर कोरोना की तरह जो है ना, कांग्रेस भी अपना रूप बदल रही है। और इस तरह के राजनीतिक हथकंडे को अपनाना और उसको अपना के इस तरह की ओछी राजनीति करना, मैं समझता हूं कि ये देश हित में नहीं है और देशवासियों के हित में नहीं है। सवाल यह है कि कांग्रेस जो है आज ये भी कह सकती है कि राहुल गांधी के अमेठी में हार के लिए जो है ये पेगासस ही जिम्मेवार है। उसकी 40 सीट से 55 सीट तक जो एक अपोजिशन लीडर का तगमा उसको जो हासिल नहीं हुआ पार्लियामेंट में, उसके लिए भी यही जासूसी कराने के बाद जो है वो उसके लिए वही जिम्मेवार है। आज इनके लोग ये कह रहे हैं कि मध्य प्रदेश से लेकर अरुणाचल में पूरे देश में अगर कहीं कुछ हुआ है तो उसके लिए कांग्रेस पार्टी का भ्रष्टाचार।
नहीं, आप क्या कह रहे हैं कि ये पेगासस की जो रोल है, जो कर्नाटका की सरकार को टॉपल करने में, अभी ये जो लिंक एस्टैब्लिश हुआ है, आप कह रहे हैं कि ये कांग्रेस की कंस्पिरेसी है? ये जो इंटरनेशनल कंसोर्टियम ऑफ जर्नलिस्ट ने ये जो इन्वेस्टिगेशन करी है, जो छपा है, आप कह रहे हैं कि ये गलत है, ये कंस्पिरेसी है? क्या कह रहे हैं आप?
देखिए, पार्लियामेंट के अंदर आईटी मिनिस्टर ने क्लियर कट कहा कि पेगासस से इस तरह का कोई लेना देना नहीं है। उसके बाद इनके जो नेता है कल प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करके एक डॉक्यूमेंट्स ले आते हैं, उसमें दिखाते हैं कि पहले जो एक्स आईटी मिनिस्टर थे उनके ये बयान थे कि उन्होंने इस मामले में नोटिस जारी किया। तो सवाल यह है कि अगर सरकार ने कोई सर्विस लिया था तो नोटिस क्यों जारी किया, उस सर्विस को टर्मिनेट क्यों नहीं किया? तो अपने ही बयानों से कंट्राडिक्ट करने वाले लोग, राफेल की तरह एक और झूठ बोलने वाले ये पार्टी।
ऐश्वर्या महादेव वांट्स टू रिस्पॉन्ड टू दैट।
बताइए कि क्या राफेल के ऊपर इन्होंने क्या नहीं कहा और क्या नहीं सुना इस देश ने? और ये वो लोग
आपने मेरे सवाल का जवाब दिया नहीं महेश वर्मा जी, बट ऐश्वर्या वांट्स टू कम इन। ऐश्वर्या गो अहेड।
पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि इस तरह की राजनीति करने का ये समय है,
वर्मा जी एंड एवरीबॉडी
राजनीति करने का ये समय है
that they have absolutely no responses or even a reply, so they obviously indulge in ad hominem attacks and also rhetoric. With what he's trying to say, he should say the Congress party is the one that even caused COVID in this country, but then again, no oxygen deaths have happened, right? The fact of the matter remains, when something as grave as this comes up, you cannot hide behind attacking the opposition. It is your responsibility as a sovereign entity to either allow a probe or even give clear-cut answers.
Smita Gupta, Smita Gupta, what are we to make of the government stand? What are we to make of the government stand? You said, Smita, let me bring in Smita Gupta into the conversation. You said in your opening remarks that this is a software that is available only to governments. What are we then to make of the government's reaction to the questions that are being asked?
That the government has a great deal to hide. Because, I mean, it's absolutely correct. As a citizen, as a journalist, I want answers. I want to know why Pegasus is being used by this government, as it must be, to monitor the telephones of journalists, politicians, citizens. What is the rationale? The government, I mean, the BJP spokesman here is pretending as though the government has nothing to do with Pegasus. It's the only person, the only entity that controls Pegasus in this country. Nobody else, you or I or the Congress party or the Mamata Banerjee's party cannot have access to Pegasus, the use of Pegasus. So they must answer. If they are innocent, let us know what.
Mahesh Verma, I think that's a very direct question that Smita Gupta has asked. Would you like to answer that?
जी, मैं कह रहा हूं कि इनके शुरुआती रिमार्क्स में ये बात सामने इन्होंने रखी कि अगर कोई एविडेंस नहीं है और एविडेंस के बिना आप
नहीं, वो ये कह रहे हैं कि सरकार के अलावा पेगासस कोई कंट्रोल कर ही नहीं सकता है। इस पे क्या रिएक्शन है आपका?
लिस्ट में था नाम।
सुनिए, सरकार का काम है कि कोई अगर आपने बात कही है, एक मीडिया रिपोर्ट के बेसिस पे जो बात आपने कही है उसको पार्लियामेंट आज चल रहा है, पार्लियामेंट के अंदर फ्लोर के ऊपर आप ये कह रहे हैं कि मंत्री झूठ बोल रहे हैं, आप ये कह रहे हैं कि ये सारा चीज बकवास है। हम इस चीज को किसी तरह से नहीं मानते, ना पार्लियामेंट को मानते, ना इस देश के संविधान को मानते हैं।
नहीं, आप लिस्ट पे रिएक्ट कीजिए ना, हम तो पार्लियामेंट पर जा ही नहीं रहे हैं। We've reported what's been said in parliament. No, we've reported what's been said in parliament. But Smita Gupta has asked you a very direct question that if not the government, who controls?
स्मिता जी को इस देश में कानून है। स्मिता जी को अगर उनकी कहीं प्राइवेसी में कोई किसी ने किसी तरह से कोई व्यवधान पैदा किया है, उनकी किसी तरह से प्राइवेसी को किसी तरह से ट्रेसपास किया है, तो उस केस में जो है कानून है, उस कानून के तहत कंप्लेन करे, एविडेंस दे, उसके ऊपर कानून सरकार जो है कार्रवाई करेगी, एक्शन लेगी।
Okay, I'm afraid I'm completely out of time. You've heard both sides of the story. You've also heard the questions that both Smita Gupta and I have asked. Unfortunately, we haven't got any clear answers, neither from the spokesperson here on the broadcast, nor from the government. I'm afraid I'm completely out of time. We're going to have to wrap this discussion. Thank you all very much for joining us. Short break here. We'll bring you more news on Good Morning India. Stay with us. Welcome back. On to the other big story we're tracking for you this morning. The Union Health Ministry has said that states did not provide any information on deaths of COVID patients in hospitals due to a lack of oxygen. With the number of deaths due to oxygen shortage making headlines during the second wave, especially here in Delhi. Now, this is a matter that has drawn sharp criticism from the opposition. The government, however, said due to unprecedented surge in demand for medical oxygen during the second wave, the demand in the country peaked to 9,000 metric tons. Active caseload of states and union territories was the primary determinant, which was the basis on which oxygen allocation was decided. The government also said that factors such as case doubling rate, medical infrastructure, etc. were given due consideration, and the allocation was kept dynamic as per the changing pandemic load. But the government on the floor of the House has denied that there were any deaths of COVID-19 patients due to a shortage of medical oxygen. Let's first listen in to what the Union Health Minister had to say.
और प्रधानमंत्री जी ने बार बार कहा मृत्यु रजिस्टर करिए, छुपाने का कोई कारण ही नहीं है। स्टेट करता है, उसको ही रजिस्ट्रेशन करना होता है, उसको डालना होता है। यहाँ तो किसी ने मना नहीं किया है। भारत सरकार आंकड़ा छुपा रही है। भारत सरकार जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट आंकड़ा भेजती है उसको कंपाइल करके पब्लिश करती है। भारत सरकार का काम होता है उसको पब्लिश करने का, उसके अलावा हमारा कोई काम नहीं होता है।
Well, there were no deaths due to the shortage of medical oxygen. That's what the government has said. However, the story as it unfolded on the ground and as we reported it here live was very different. And I'm joined at the moment on the phone line by two prominent doctors from Delhi, Dr. S.C.L. Gupta, Medical Director of the Batra Hospital, one of the hospitals that dialed us at that point to highlight the SOS for medical oxygen, and Brigadier Manohar Khajuria, the Director of Saroj Hospital, is also with us. Dr. Gupta, if I can come to you first, what do you make of what the government has said on the floor of the Parliament?
There are two different stories, ma'am. There was an oxygen shortage. Patient died because of an oxygen shortage, undoubtedly. But what the system of the country prevails, that central government, state subject, health is a state subject. A state has to inform to the central government about the death. They have informed probably. I do not know why it's not confirmed, but we do inform to the government, state government, that how many deaths because of the COVID happened, and they must have informed. As long as oxygen is concerned, look, whenever we making a death certificates, nobody mentions the cause of death is always is cardiac arrest, cardiopulmonary arrest, respiration, death because of a cardiopulmonary arrest. See, these are the reasons for. Even the patient of a malaria, if he dies, so we never write that this patient is died because of malaria. So the two things are totally different. I mean, central government is right in his place because they have, whatever the state government has informed to the central government, they have published that data. From our side, we have informed to the state government. Now this is up to the state government whether they are informing or they are not informing. But this is very definite that there has been deaths. There has been total chaos during that 1 month of oxygen availability. Patients not only in Delhi, all over country was crying for oxygen. Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and death everywhere, in UP also, in Goa also, in 3-4 hospitals, in Delhi also. This is the reported deaths. How many unreported deaths, nobody knows. So you cannot deny that there was no death because of an oxygen. Whatever the policy is the government policy. We are not the politicians. We are the simple doctors. So we are working with for the patients.
Yes.
We are working for the patients. So
Yes.
this is definite that there was an SOS call in the morning, and for 5 hours we kept waiting. By the time we have finished
Dr.
our
Gupta,
quota.
I think you raise very important points, because you're saying that from first-hand experience, what we saw here in the national capital and several other parts of the country, it is undeniable that lives were lost in the second wave of the pandemic due to a shortage of medical oxygen supply. Brigadier Khajuria, should the government then not be saying that these deaths have not been documented? We don't know how many, instead of denying that there were any deaths due to medical oxygen shortage?
I feel government should accept this fact, because deaths have occurred due to shortage of oxygen. All over Delhi, number of hospitals reported it, number of patients who were admitted, and because of lack of oxygen, they passed away. It had happened, it did not happen in our hospital, but we were at the verge where we had been left with just about 5 to 10 minutes of oxygen with us, and it was a miracle. You know, it happened about 5-6 times that we were at the edge, and somehow, I think miraculously, because I had sent my teams all over, and if they could get off any tanker of medical oxygen to get it, and somehow they used to manage it, and that's how we survived, and we could avert these deaths. Otherwise, I'm sure the our hospital also, deaths would have taken place, especially of those patients who were on the ventilator. And I have also seen myself that we could not take patients because we didn't have beds, we didn't have oxygen. We had to say no to that patient, and later on we came to know that the patient, while going to another hospital, they expired in the ambulance. So such cases have not been reported, but they are there.
Yes.
So actually speaking, it was a very precarious situation. Nobody knew what was happening. We were really trying our best, and we did everything to get the oxygen. We even at the time of, and such times we managed to, those patients who were on oxygen only, not on ventilators, we reduced their flow of oxygen so that our tank, our availability, is extended for further, and we were expecting some miracle will happen and we'll get the oxygen.
All right. Well, Brigadier Khajuria, you're also raising a very important point, because not just are you
fighting a battle every day. There were very tense moments we have gone through.
Well, absolutely. Tense moments, and what you're saying is that, it was not just deaths that were caused due to a shortage of medical oxygen, but we also saw so many patients being turned away, not getting access to medical oxygen or not getting access to a bed with oxygen, that could have also potentially led to so many deaths that, aren't documented as deaths due to a lack or a shortage of medical oxygen. It's a story we're going to continue to track. Thank you, doctors, very much for joining us with your perspective. So, Dr. S.C. Algupta and Brigadier Khajuria are there, in fact, saying it is undeniable that lives were lost due to a shortage of oxygen. Short break here. We'll bring you more news on the other side. Welcome back to our special campaign, Vaccinate India, in partnership with Google, where we look to answer questions you may be Googling about the COVID-19 vaccine. Joining us from Madurai is Dr. Vel Kumar, the head of Department Pulmonology at the Meenakshi Mission Hospital. Thanks so much, Doctor, for being with us. One of the most commonly asked questions is, how long does it take to develop immunity after you've been given the coronavirus vaccine?
Yeah. First of all, good morning to every one of you. This is the common question where everyone is asking. We have to make sure that we have to take 2 doses of vaccine as advised by the government. If you take adequate 2 doses of vaccine, usually it will take around 2 to 3 weeks for you to develop an immune response to the virus. So everyone is assuming that even if you take one vaccine, you are protected and you are completely covered against COVID. It's not. It's a false fact. You have to make sure that you take adequate 2 doses of vaccination, and even after 2 doses of vaccination, it will take approximately 2 to 3 weeks for you to develop an adequate immune response against the virus.
Right. The question then is, those individuals who've received 1 dose of the vaccine, and now we know that the dosing gap, especially for Covishield, has been increased. What is the kind or the level of protection that those individuals have, those who've been vaccinated with 1 dose and are waiting, for that extended time period to get their 2nd dose?
Yes. First of all, you have to understand that even after COVID vaccination, there are some rare instances you can acquire viral infection. For that, even if you are vaccinated, you have to make sure that you are following adequately COVID appropriate behavior protocol. That is what social distancing, adequate masking when you are going outside, and sanitization and adequate vaccination. So you have to make sure that even if you are vaccinated, you have to follow the COVID appropriate behavior protocol. See, the aim of the vaccination, first, as we all know, to reduce occurrence of the virus. And second one is to prevent the severe form of diseases. You have to understand that the role of vaccination, as far as any vaccination is concerned, to prevent severe form of infection. So you can reduce yourself from the mortality, you can acquire from the severe form of disease, hospitalization. That is the adequate aim of universal vaccination. You have to understand that. Okay.
All right. Well, the other question that I want to ask you is about, how can a vaccinated person be a carrier and perhaps an asymptomatic carrier of COVID, and can a vaccinated person pass on the COVID infection to an unvaccinated person?
Yes, obviously. Obviously, when you're acquiring viral infection, for example, COVID viral infection, you are eligible to spread to others. That is what I am again and again insisting on, COVID appropriate behavior protocol, which the government is universally emphasizing throughout the year. So you have to make sure, even if you are vaccinated or unvaccinated, when you acquire an infection, whether it is symptomatic or an asymptomatic, you are a carrier of the virus, right? So obviously you are going to spread it to the other persons when you do not follow this basic behavior protocol. So even if you are vaccinated, if you have acquired the infection, probably you may be having a mild infection, but you are not, that you cannot spread to others. You can spread to others.
Is the risk higher, doctor, with vaccinated individuals? We know that typically, even if a vaccinated individual does get a breakthrough infection, the chances are that you'll be asymptomatic or you'll have a very mild disease. So you may not know after 2 shots of the vaccine that you actually have coronavirus, and you could potentially, infect somebody who's not been vaccinated.
Yes, that's what I'm telling you. That applies even to an unvaccinated individual. Unvaccinated individual who got a milder infection or asymptomatic infection is also having the same eligible risk to spread to others. That is why we have to make sure, even though vaccination programs are adequate, please follow the 3 basic protocols so that you can prevent or break the chain of transmission, thereby making sure we are not spreading the infection to others.
Right. So you're saying that even after you've been vaccinated, COVID appropriate behavior in a certain sense has to be followed, whether you've got 1 shot or 2 shots of the vaccine?
Yes, absolutely. 200%.
All right. Well, thanks so much, doctor, for sparing your time and answering all those questions.
So, thank you.
Well, on to the other big story that we're tracking today. The West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, who's also the chairperson of the Trinamool Congress, will address party workers virtually today to mark the annual Shaheed Divas or Martyrs Day. But BJP has locked horns and will also observe this particular day today in Bengal to protest against the post-poll violence. Let's go right across to Moni Deepa joining us for the very latest. Moni, what more can you tell us?
Well, Mamata Banerjee's speech will be broadcast in several parts of the country, including New Delhi. And the BJP's protests too will start in Delhi at 11 o'clock and then carry on in Bengal from about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So what we have happening before us is a Shaheed Divas by the BJP versus the Shaheed Divas of the Trinamool Congress. The two parties appear to have locked horns even on the issue of martyr death. Now, Trinamool has been observing Shaheed Divas ever since its foundation in 1998 to remember 13 youth who died in police firing in Kolkata in 1993 when Mamata Banerjee was a youth congress chief here, and the youth congress procession had been fired upon in Kolkata. Now, we don't know whether it was prompted, what it was prompted by, but yesterday suddenly we had a BJP press conference in which it was declared that the BJP would observe today as Shaheed Shraddhanjali Day in memory of all the people killed in post-poll violence, and of course to highlight the NHRC report submitted in Calcutta High Court, which has called for a CBI probe into the post-poll violence. So the BJP is certainly taking a punch at the Trinamool Congress on this. The Trinamool carrying on regardless. Very important day for the Trinamool. This is the first time that Mamata Banerjee will be addressing party workers after the victory, a very decisive victory of the 2nd of May in the West Bengal Assembly elections. And there is a clear move by the Trinamool to take, to move out beyond Bengal's borders. So her speech will be, shown on giant LED screens, not only in Kolkata and Bengal, but also in states like Assam and Tripura, as well as Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, and in Delhi as well, where at the Constitution Club, the Trinamool is going to set up a giant LED for people to come and watch Mamata Banerjee's speech. And of course, they have invited several opposition leaders from, AIADMK to Shiv Sena to Congress to all come and watch her speech together. And don't forget, Mamata Banerjee is off to Delhi on Sunday, and she'll be spending a week in Delhi, going and meeting friends in Parliament, and therefore we can expect more politics to develop, opposition politics. But BJP is not sitting back and will be holding its own Martyrs' Day and certainly trying to seek some political limelight from the event. Back to you.
Thanks, Monideepa, for joining us with the very latest. We'll keep a close watch on all those speeches and, of course, the BJP's protest. Now, while the country is celebrating Eid today amid the COVID-19 pandemic, and we wish all our viewers an Eid Mubarak, and amid the rain and all the COVID SOPs, it's a subdued celebration in Kashmir where no large Eid congregational prayers were held in the region. People offered Eid prayers in local mosques as the administration and religious leaders asked people to avoid large gatherings due to the pandemic. Let's go right across to Nazir. Nazir, a subdued Eid celebration in view of the COVID pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. In a sense, it is the third year in a row and third consecutive year when we don't have the large Eid gatherings or muted Eid in Jammu and Kashmir. It started in 2019 post-abrogation of Article 370. Last year, it was because of the COVID, and this year again, because of the COVID protocol or the SOPs, administration and also the religious leaders advised people to avoid.
All right, we seem to have lost that line with Nazir. Nazir, can you hear us? All right, we seem to have lost that line with Nazir, but we'll of course track Eid celebrations. Eid Mubarak once again to all our viewers. India has reported over 42,000 new cases of coronavirus in the last 24 hours. This is a 40% jump as compared to the previous 24 hours. 42,015 new coronavirus infections have been reported. India's active caseload currently is at 4,07,000. Active cases constitute 1.30% of the total cases. The weekly positivity rate remains below 5%. Daily positivity rate is at 2.27%. It's also risen, but it's been less than 3% now for 30 consecutive days. Now, interestingly, the number of deaths that have been reported in the last 24 hours have risen sharply. This is largely owing to a backlog that's been added, but 3,998 deaths have been reported. This is primarily because of a backlog of 3,500 deaths being reported from the state of Maharashtra.